Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Game Over Toronto, live after the Leafs defeated the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-2. Second win in a row, second win of the season. Exciting night. Lots of good things to take away from this, and a few things I think we can maybe work on as well. My name is Dominic Jones, and joining me tonight, thrilled to be here with the legend that is Lauren Williamson. Lauren, thanks for being here. How are you feeling after this game?
Well, I'm feeling happy and full of apple crisp and turkey. I hope everyone in Canada is having a wonderful Thanksgiving. I couldn't be happier with tonight unless they scored on the power play, but that's a bigger issue that I'm sure we will get to. But it was a great battle to start out. The Leafs didn't come up very strong in the first, but they come back in the second, roar back to life, and then get the insurance goal with an empty netter. So, I mean, Game 3, they didn't do well in Game 1, did better in Game 2, and tonight I think was a little bit of both. So I'm happy to be streaming with you, and welcome to the team, man. Happy to have you.
Thank you. This is exciting. I'm really excited. I'm really excited. As I said, I've been podcasting for like 10 years, always about Star Wars, though. And this is my first go at it with hockey. And as a hockey fan for my whole life, this just feels right. It feels natural.
Right. Is this your first live stream?
No, we've been doing live for the Star Wars pod for about 3-4 years now, but never with this system that we use here. Which, hence, again, hopefully, if you're listening to this after the fact, you have no idea of the little mistakes right off the hop. But let's get into this game. Let's start breaking it down. Lauren, I'll throw it to you. What was your first big takeaway from this game here?
Oh, geez. My overall takeaway?
Yeah, your overall takeaway.
Is that this team seems to, if they don't start strong, they seem to, for the most part, be able to turn it around.
Yes.
In years previous, it seemed like if the Leafs were trailing behind, they would sometimes fight back, but it seemed more desperate. And it usually came in the last period, not in the second period. So I'm glad to see that they, closed the chapter on the first period and were able to completely turn around and play significantly, visibly better in the second period. I am pleased that they tried to make some adjustments on the power play. Like I said, I know we're going to talk about that later, but that's my overall assessment. How about you, my friend?
Yeah, I agree. I think those first 5 minutes in particular were rough. I think it was about 5-0 shots for Pittsburgh, but Stolarz came up big in his second game, feeling pretty confident with him in net. And then, things evened out in the first period. And then the Leafs in the second period, it was all Leafs all the time from literally the first minute with Nylander's goal all the way through to the end. And then, of course, they can't quite be perfect. They still have to give us a little bit of a heart attack there in the third period. But again, Nylander coming up with the empty netter to close things out and make sure that we are here and happy on this Thanksgiving weekend.
That's right. We can have a restful turkey coma.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a couple of players that I want to go through that I think were kind of the big stories of the game. And I think the first one I want to start with is Matthew Knies. This is I don't know if we count this as his second or his third season. He got into a couple of games at the end of the 22-23 season. And then last year was his first full season. This is his second full season. I keep expecting a sophomore slump from this guy, but I think he did that last year. I think last year was his sophomore slump, and here tonight he gets a goal. He seems to be generating a lot of offense. Very, very impressed with the other guy from Arizona. And any thoughts on Matthew Knies?
Oh my gosh, so many. Like you said, to answer your question, I would consider this his sophomore year because he did play, if I remember correctly, less than 10 games in that first season.
It's true.
So we'll count that as not an entry-level contract year burned. Yeah. But, he came in at the very end of the season. He was not a mainstay. It's hard to come into the league at the very end like that. Last year, he was very good. I think we were all expecting him to be good. I think we were all surprised he was as good as he was and already so developed and quite large. And even though last year, I think he only got like 35 points or something. The way he's playing this year in terms of his size, in terms of his positioning, in terms of his strength, I'm going to make a quick reference to last game on the PK when Dougie Hamilton literally ran into him and bounced off like Dougie Hamilton was made out of rubber. And Dougie Hamilton is not a small person.
No.
And like he runs into Niles and Niles is like, what did you do that for? And it's like he wasn't even affected and went down the ice and almost scored. And then tonight he actually gets rewarded. He gets the Leafs off to was it the third goal?
I think it was I believe it's the second goal.
Second goal. Just 2 minutes and 5 seconds after William Nylander gets the first. He's looking really strong. I mean, listen, we've all talked as Leaf fans about the fact that if that draft class is done again, he probably goes in the top 10 just based on his size, his skill, his ability to play with top players like Matthews, like Marner, and look comfortable and look like he belongs there, even just in his first season as a rookie. So he might have to be the next jersey that I buy, if I'm being totally honest, just because I think it's clear that he likes it here. I think it's clear the opportunity here, he's not going to get anywhere else. And I will fight and I will go to war for somebody against somebody that wants to take him away from me.
Yeah, no, he feels like he's fitting right in, that
he's always been here.
Yeah, and he's sort of picked up where he left things off last year in the postseason, in a good way. As they stopped scoring in that Boston series. I mean, they never really scored in that Boston series, but he was one of the few guys who did come up big with the Game 5 OT winner, and even as the other two more high-profile, more high-paid members of his line maybe got off to slightly slower starts, although we'll come on to Marner's goal in a little bit, and I think Marner also assisted on Nyes' goal. He still managed to sort of stand out amongst the rest. He still was standing out. He was the one guy that looked like he started the season on that line on time. We'll talk more about the power play later, but
we'll make that its own awful segment. Good segment.
But things started to look up when he showed up, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Another guy I want to touch on, I think, is Max Domi. Didn't get a goal, but he set up a lot of good stuff, and I think the game kind of turned, interestingly enough, when they put him with Nylander, and then when they moved Robertson up there, like that line. God help us in the defensive zone, but in the offensive zone, pretty exciting, and he produced a lot of chances, and it says something about Max Domi as a playmaker that a play that led to a kind of hilarious penalty for the Leafs was started by an incredible setup from him. I mean, that Bobby McMahon goaltending interference penalty where he just bowled the goalie over. He was a very nice scoring chance that was a lot to do with Max Domi, and that was a few minutes after he had set up the Nylander goal with a tremendous fake. Max seems to be another guy picking up where he left things off last year. Would you agree with that, Lauren?
100%. I mean, if you look back at the beginning of last year, he went 20 games without a point. Like he was cold as ice, no pun intended, to start the season last year. And so for him to start off this strong this season has been really. It's been a nice breath of fresh air because it's not somebody that we now have to worry about him clicking. It's clear that as the season went on last year that he was gaining chemistry with the top line, with just about anybody he played with. It just took some time. And so even, after the Benoit trip in the first period where the Pittsburgh Penguins scored, there was a play where Max Domi literally broke somebody's ankles and caused them to quite literally fall over into the board. And great. We don't see him do that very often, but when he does it, he's able to create a little bit of space, and it really is like a little miniature cannon that you can send into the zone, and even if two guys are on him, he's usually going to get through them. And so it's that kind of level of truculence, similar to what Matthew Nyes has, only Domi's like 6 inches shorter, if not more, which is again great to see. I mean, Domi's been around in the league a long time. I think he's played on no less than 6 or 8 teams at this point.
Yeah,
he's been around, and he gets the assist on William Nylander's goal, and I think that him going into that, like you said, God help us in the defensive zone. But when Max Domi is paired up with somebody that is a goal scorer, like Austin Matthews last year, like Nick Robertson this year so far, good things can happen. And so it's just about, obviously the defensive lapses, they're going to happen. And that team, if they can make up for the defensive lapses by the fact that all three of them are very capable of stripping the puck off of guys. Like William Nylander is sneaky good in terms of stick lifts. So is Nick Robertson. I mean, in the preseason, that one goal that he got was literally the result of him stick lifting, taking the puck and just firing it in the back of the net. And even though he hasn't been rewarded so far in the regular season, I think that he can do a lot of good. And I think Max Domi might be a good part of that if they end up on the same line together like they were tonight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Robertson is another guy who's had a strong start to the season and played well in this game. And I thought he showed kind of a different side of him where instead of taking a penalty, he drew a penalty. He did a really good job at making sure that he put the Penguins in a position where they had no choice because he is a threat and he has that potential to score. And yeah, this line, this Nylander Domi Robertson line, it has been and can be a lot of fun, and it's just a matter of seeing, making sure they never ever have to take a defensive zone faceoff because oh boy. Oh boy,
yeah, you'd be, but in that situation, you're almost better like putting a your defenseman in the face-off dot because oh my god. The one thing I do taken
by Simon Benoit. Let's see how that goes.
I mean, it would screw up the other team,
yeah,
right?
Would
There's
really,
no rules against it. Why not?
They'd really
Anthony Stolarz, you're next, buddy. Come on down.
Yeah, just said, Willie, you're going to play goal for the first 5 seconds of this shift.
Just,
Good luck.
Stand there and just make yourself look real big.
Glove out. Come on, bud. You got this.
Yeah, that's all it takes. That's all it takes. And I'm sure we'll talk about Stolarz too. But that line, I'm glad they mixed up the power play lines. Like I said, I actually think that there's a good chance that Nick Robertson ends up, if they continue to shift the power plays around, I actually wouldn't be against. Earlier today, I wrote down a number of power play lines and then I completely didn't take a picture of them, forgetting that I was not going to be at my normal filming location. If you're new here, this is not normally where I film. This is my parents' basement. But I actually think that Nick Robertson on the power play is a really good option because he's a shoot first mentality. And I think that if you swap the lines around, he's somebody that if he gets an opportunity on PP1, especially because of how poorly the power play is going, I think that maybe that mixes some stuff up and it gives power play 2 more options in terms of offense because you could maybe put 2 of 4 of the big 4 on the second power play and change it up. Now, I'm not saying put him in front of the net and be the bumper position, but if you have him by the faceoff dot, those shots that he gets are at a weird angle. Every goalie in the league that has faced him and he has scored on has spoken about it, about the fact that his shot is very hard to take. He's hard to read, and he is a different kind of offensive weapon. I think it's just a matter of time before he gets another couple ones in the regular season when it really counts.
Yeah, now once we've sort of eased our way into the season, I think with a lot of these lines, a lot of the players, and it feels like we're just moments away from guys breaking out in a way that feels like they're living up to their true potential.
Sure.
You mentioned Stolarz. Let's go to him next. He again shuts the door pretty well. They said on the broadcast it's one of those funny stats you don't really think about it until somebody points out his first even strength goal of the season given up in the third period. That's pretty good. But overall, a fairly strong performance from the team's number one goalie, seeing as the guy who was supposed to be was in his suit on the bench during the ceremony.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, talking about those opening ceremonies, it's got to be tough for some of those players that we know want to play that aren't right now, right? Timothy Liljegren could not have looked less pleased about being sat on the bench.
It looked miserable.
And considering Benoit took another 2 penalties tonight, is there I think that there is a remote chance that Liljegren actually gets into a game sooner rather than later, just based on the fact that the PK has not been doing very well. No. But sorry, I'm off topic. You asked me about
that's all right.
I think that it's early season jitters, man. It's like it's all new to me too. For him to start out the season the way that he did, he gives up 1 goal against the Habs, but he looks really good all game. And even tonight, there were a couple flurries in front of the net that he was able to stop and find the puck through that previous goalies that ends up going in. You know, I mean, in fairness, there were a couple of opportunities that the Penguins had that they completely whiffed on. There was a really, I think if you play this game 100 times, it's probably closer to 50-50 about the number of times that the Penguins win it, because there were so many just half an inch too far whiff chances that they got, but all the opportunities that they weren't screened on, Stolarz has been able to save. There have been a couple of unbelievable shots in every game that he's played so far that have really impressed me. And again, I think that other goalies that we've had, that goes in at least one more. And the other thing too is that some of our goalies previously in the closing minutes, they give up the empty netter goals a little bit more. And both Stolarz and Hildeby have, when the other team has pulled their goalie, have really held the fort down. And they've both got me feeling like with a whole lot of swagger in terms of confidence in our goalie. And we don't even have the guy that we thought was going to be our number one guy. So I think we're sitting pretty right now. How about you? What do you think? What do you think of the new guy?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there with the last few minutes has in the past felt like the Leafs, and the Leafs are just doomed to give one up. And there were a couple of chances where Pittsburgh was really pressing, and there was Anthony Stolarz. He shut the door. I think there were a couple of speed wobbles. There was a one where he basically let it go loose himself because he got scared because Tanev went behind him. But overall, he didn't blink. He didn't give up the goal. He never actually made the critical mistake. And I just feel like certainly this time last year, if we were in this position, the puck would have gone in. And as much as I loved Jack Campbell when he was here, same sort of thing. It felt like those things almost felt like a certainty that we would we'd wind up in overtime. We did wind up in overtime in game one. No, we didn't. It came real close, but it didn't. But we've managed to avoid that so far. Yes. We've managed to avoid that critical failing in the final minutes. And part of that is the defense being stronger. Part of that is better buy-in, perhaps from some of the forwards that are on the ice. But a big part of it is the goalie is just able to come up big. And I think that bodes well for Stolarz and bodes well for the whole team, even when Wool comes back, if he is able to be what we want him to be. If you've got a 1-2 punch of Joseph Woll at his best and Anthony Stolarz and what we've seen in the first two games, or in his first two games, I think that's a pretty good sign. That's a pretty good place to be, a pretty good start. So I very happy with what we've seen from the goaltenders.
And just before we move on.
Oh, for sure.
I have one thing that I do want to say about Stolarz. In each of the games that he's played, there has been a moment where he's played the puck and it has not gone particularly well, which is a little bit troubling. But to your point, right before we move on, last season, if we go back, and I have been this is my same notebook from last year. I was actually just looking at some of the notes when you were talking about the playoffs. Think about, and if you're watching this, you probably remember last year the difference between when the team played in front of Wall when he was healthy, in front of Samsonov when he was healthy and playing well. Right? There was a overwhelming, and you could smell the nervousness and the anxiety that the team had when Samsonov was in net versus when Wall was in net. They played stronger when Wall was in net. They made better passes. There was better decision making. They were less hesitant, and they just seemed more settled. And this year, both of the goalies that have played so far, while I know Hildeby is probably at this point maybe the third goalie, for them to have that level of confidence. And so far in the season, it's game 3, it's early. There's been no goals where you go, I should have had that. Really, the first goal tonight, it's a slap shot from Chris Letang. That's a tough shot to block. Yeah. And then the second goal that they get, listen, it was a really nice drop pass by Evgeny Malkin, and they bury it because there's a screen, and the screen was right in front of the puck player, right? So it looks like Malkin is going to be skating away, and the puck gets off the stick as Malkin is in front of him. So he can't see the other guy's positioning. They can't see where it's going, and it goes in the back of the net. It's unfortunate, and they do crawl within one. But luckily, after the Raquel goal, the Leafs were able to really hunker down and get the empty netter. So, like I said, there's been no really bad, egregious goals like there have been with other goalies. Samsonov, Jack Campbell it was almost like in a really important game, he was almost guaranteed a waffle shot where it's wow, man, he should have had that. And so far, I mean, I know it's early, but there haven't been any signs of that, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Real quick, I do want to go back to you started to get onto Liljegren, and how
Yeah,
you're waiting to see if he's going to come in.
how he's feeling.
Yeah, I feel like with him, rather than Benoit, I think the team is sort of waiting for Connor Timmins to slip up, and that's when Liljegren will get his moment. And so far, Timmins has he been the best defenseman on the ice? No. But he hasn't felt as catastrophic as he felt at times in previous years. He's always shown he has the potential to be a reliable sort of puck moving defenseman, and then that seems to go away, and that's why so many people wrote him off coming into this year. He wasn't on a lot of people's projections for the preseason, and then something he did caught Craig Berube's eye, and he's been in there. And as soon as that happened, Liljegren just started falling down the depth chart, and I feel like they're holding on to Liljegren, not pursuing too many options just yet. Elliot Friedman on the broadcast was talking a lot about they're preaching patience. It's almost as if they're waiting to see if Connor Timmins slips, then it's Liljegren's chance. And if neither of them can grab that spot and run with it, maybe then it becomes time to make a move to bring in another puck moving defenseman. But so far, I can't pick too many holes in what we've seen from Connor Timmins, given his relative spot in the lineup.
No, and he took a penalty in each of the first two games. He didn't take a penalty tonight, but like Simone Benoit has taken like 6 penalties so far.
Yeah,
and for a team that's already taking too many penalties so far in this season, it's not good. I mean, we got 4 penalties tonight. We only got 3 power play attempts, which again they didn't capitalize on. I think you're right. I think it's sort of a wait and see which one of these guys, if either of them are going to play themselves out of a position, that Liljegren makes his opportunity. And the thing is that Liljegren is not a bad player. And Simone Benoit is a good player, and Connor Timmins is a good player. I will say, though, I don't think I've seen Connor Timmins or Simone Benoit, either of them, make a play that we would see Liljegren make. Liljegren very oftentimes, we haven't seen him since the preseason, but he has a really bad habit of, in the defensive end, getting the goal and not being able to completely clear it. He ends up he maybe gets to the puck first, maybe like 40% of the time. And then when he does get it, he usually ends up losing it to the team again. So while on the one hand, it would be nice to see Timothy Liljegren, because realistically, it's really hard to trade someone for any of their value if they're not playing.
Yeah.
So I do think that they're not, I don't think they're chomping at the bit to trade him, because let's be real, it's October, guys. There's no trade value in October like there is in February or January, right? Before the trade deadline. And so I think that they are biding their time. I think you're totally right. Why wouldn't you? You have the options to. Bide your time, see what happens. Now, I think if this trend continues with our guys taking penalties, that I do think that he may get a chance sooner rather than later, especially because at this point we are now -3 on special teams. We haven't capitalized once on the power play. We've given up a power play goal in each of the 3 games so far, and that's just not good enough. Now, is Timothy Liljegren, does he move the needle on that? Well, not really. So I don't think that that's a solution for that either, but at this point, it looks like they're already trying to change things on the power play, but I wouldn't consider Timothy Liljegren somebody that you would consider for the power play. So
No.
I'm sure at some point in the next 3 or 4 games here, we probably are going to see him. I think that there is a chance that especially if someone goes down and gets injured, heaven forbid, he will be the first player to be called up. But I'm in no rush to see him, except for the fact that Simone Benoit needs to stop taking penalties, man. Like in his first game with the Leafs in a preseason game last year, I was actually at that preseason game, and he took, I think, 2 or 3 penalties. And I remember being like, this guy's never going to make the team. And then he made the team, and I was like, I was wrong. But he never really took that many penalties. And so I don't know what's going on this year, but he's a penalty machine. So while I think I'm going to disagree with you. I think Simone Benoit might be the person coming out of the lineup for Timothy Liljegren. But I do think when they do that, they're going to regret it, because I do think Benoit's a better player. I think he's just making some bad choices right now.
I think where Benoit runs into being a risk of potentially losing his spot in a more permanent fashion is if and when they figure out what exactly is going on with Yanni Hakanpää. I think that's the guy who's who's gunning for Benoit's job. And I think the defense as a whole is probably in a little bit of a holding pattern while they figure out what's going on with that guy, because he is, this is what everybody said through the offseason. He is the typical Craig Berube, Brad Treliving guy. He's huge, and he will lay the big hits and block shots and do all the things that we rely on Benoit for. Now they can certainly both coexist in the lineup. I don't think you have to pick one or the other. But I think when Hakanpää comes a little bit closer to being ready, that's when I think Benoit's going to feel the heat on the back of his neck going, oh, right. Please stop taking stupid penalties, Self. Come on. We gotta get here. Just on Yanni Hakanpää real quick. We were talking about the pregame ceremony. Did you notice that all the players around Hakanpää on the bench were standing on the elevated portion where the coaches stand, and he was standing where the players stand?
Really?
So yeah, he was.
Is that why he was like the same height as everybody? I was like, I thought this guy was huge.
Yeah, I was looking.
That's so funny.
I had the same thought. I'm like,
how do you know that? How did you find that out? Was there like a camera angle I didn't see?
There was just one point where I'm like, oh, everybody's standing slightly behind him. Everybody's just a little bit off.
So funny.
And it was like the Tom Cruise with the milk crate thing, where nobody can be that far away from Yanni Hakanpää.
Oh my God.
Because I had the same thought. Everybody says he's huge. Why isn't he? Oh, right. They're all standing up on something and he's standing on the
I was
floor.
like, this guy's not as big. I thought he was bigger. That's so funny. That's like Gimli and Legolas. Would you like me to describe it to you? Or would you like me to find you a box? No, just the coach's bench is sufficient, obviously.
Oh, incredible.
Funny.
Let's move into our second period here and talk about some season-long trends, and this is where we've put it off long enough. The power play. This isn't even a season-long trend. This is carrying over from where we left things off with the playoffs and the end of last season. Power play one can get nothing done. That first one in particular was borderline. I was going to say borderline pathetic, but I think it was just pathetic. They lost the puck right away. Yep. Spent their minute dipsy doodling around and couldn't quite get back into the attacking zone. It was only when they got the second unit out there that there was anything even approaching a chance. And it looked to be more of the same for the second power play until they switched out Morgan Rielly for Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Max Pacioretty for Matthew Nice. John Tavares not available for this game or even the ceremony due to illness. We'll come back to that in a second. But the power play started to look a little bit more dangerous with OEL and Nice out there, but still a big offer on the score sheet. What's your feeling on the power play 3 games into the season?
I just want to know why they keep trying to do the drop. No, in all honesty, listen, I'm glad that they're trying to change out some of the personnel. I think having your top line loaded up only works if you're the Oilers and that top player is Conor McGregor. Honestly, I think there are very few, or you're Tampa Bay and you have Nikita Kucherov. But realistically, I think that the only way to get this power play going is to blow the whole thing up and screw with it. Honestly, I think moving on my list of things to do earlier on my new lines for power play, I took Morgan Rielly and I put him on power play too. He's fine, but he is not a shot threat in any way, shape, or form. And Oliver Ekman-Larsson is tied with Matthews for shot attempts. Yeah, he was in last game, and even though they're not going in, just having that as an option, it makes other teams thinking about things a little bit differently. I think it's a smart thing that they're doing with trying to make little adjustments and trying to make it happen, but they're still keeping it to the outside, and there's no real interior threat. Everything is being kept to the within 6 feet of the edges of the boards, and nothing is getting to the middle. Tonight on the first power play, there were a couple of shots where they got them on net and they just weren't able to bury the rebound. But when the other team knows that you don't have somebody that's going to stand in front of the net for the most part and muck things up as consistently as maybe other players in the past have, it's really difficult to score because the other team knows what you're going to do. Now, tonight it did seem like more people were willing to take shots, but again, they're just waiting so long to get exactly what they want it to look like. And instead of trying to not force things, but instead of trying to stick to something and make things quick, again, they're moving with the puck, I think, too much. You're skating with it too much. While it's important to move things around if things aren't gelling in that specific moment, you should not be traveling as much as the puck is on the power play. All you do is you get tired and you get exhausted, and if you turn the puck over, then you're going back the other way and you end up playing monkey in the middle again, which is what's happening. Not only are they giving up the puck, but it almost looks like they're playing at even strength when they're up a man. And it looks like there was a moment tonight where it looked like they were on the PK and it was 5-on-5. Right? And so much of that is just trying to get to the puck first and having more hustle than the PKers. The problem is that when you stick to the outside, you have all of your defenders very spread out, and they're not taking advantage of that. Like the Penguins tonight, there were moments where all four of them were very spread out, and they weren't able to get any pucks to the middle. And I think the only way that you can score at this point, it's clear, is by trying to get things to the middle and get things on net and get in the goalie's eyes, and they're just not doing it enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again the moving OEL onto that line. It did seem to inject something, and that physicality of Nyes that we were talking about. It seemed to inject something into them. And when OEL started shooting repeatedly from the point, I was like, oh right. That can happen, because it's felt like Morgan Rielly, who is one of my favorite players on this team, in the hockey cards that Andrew had made to help relaunch Game Over. You had to put who your favorite player was. I put Morgan. Like he is my guy, but he has not provided that threat for this part of the game. And all of a sudden you put Ekman-Larsson there, and it suddenly they're rejuvenated, and the first power play unit stayed out basically for the entirety of the second and third power plays of the game. They were there the whole time, and at least they were applying pressure. They were applying pressure, which couldn't be said before. And like you're saying, Morgan Rielly moving to the second unit feels appropriate. He's still useful back there. He's still a great puck mover, but I think this is what you brought in Ekman-Larsson for. This is the guy who ran the power play in the Stanley Cup final for the team that won. That has to mean something, and that means that this is his specialty. And so to put him in this situation, all of a sudden, it feels like there's a little bit of hope there. There's a little bit of hope there, and I would hope they keep Nyes out there as well. We'll see what happens when Tavares is back, but I gotta think he provides something different, something that's missing. He goes to the net so that when there are shots, somebody's there creating some havoc in front and can either bang in a rebound or make sure the defenders have a harder time getting to the rebound while somebody else comes in and gets it. To the point where there was a play late in the last penalty, I think, where Nyes was there. He was clearly expecting Matthews to shoot it. And so he was positioning himself for a rebound. Matthews wound up trying to pass it to him, went off his skates and went nowhere. But I think you got to, again, get the puck on net and create some havoc in front. And all of a sudden, maybe there's a little bit of hope.
Maybe we can be 1 for 11.
1 for 11. Yeah. Get things rolling again. Get things rolling there.
Like you said, before you move on,
sure.
You said, OEL brings an intangible that this team has not had in the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time a defenseman was on the power play and was actually a feasible and likely goal scorer from the blue line?
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you $20 if you can go into the chat right now and tell me the last time it happened, because I don't remember. Because it's something that other teams in the league know, so they don't have to cover. They don't have to worry about a slapper coming from the point, because the Leafs just don't do it.
Yeah,
they just don't. It's not been something that they've done in recent memory, and so a lot of the players that are now in the league don't think of that as an option for the Leafs, so they don't have to consider it. With OEL being moved onto that top line, it does create a little bit more opportunity for the power play to get going, and it gives it a different look. A wrist shot rebound looks very different than a slap shot rebound, right? And so, even though they weren't able to capitalize on it tonight, I have a feeling that because it does make it look a little bit different, they're going to go forward with it, at least for a couple games, to see what happens. Why not? Everything you've done up till now hasn't been working. So try it for more than one games, in the words of William Nylander. The other thing about the power play that I really liked is the fact that they do have two very strong net front people in Matthew Nyes, and Max Pacioretty was also on that top line tonight. I know he's been on it before, but the one goal that he got to kick the season off was right in front of the net. He is capable of doing that now. Is he someone that's going to stand for the net and let someone play the xylophone on his spine? No, but just having a couple guys around the net that are going to bury it if it's in the rebound zone, even though they're not clicking, I think OEL and Patches are a good addition to that line. And I do think that having Matthew Nyes on that also gives a little bit of like truculence to that PP1. And hopefully against the Kings, they can turn the page, because I'm a little bit sick of talking about it.
Oh yeah.
It's only game 3.
It's
my God.
Game 3. Yeah. It's something's got to give. Either they got to start clicking and get some scoring, or you got to break up that top unit and create 2 more balanced units and see if one or both of them can create some magic. And I think there's something to be said for that as an idea too. We'll just have to see if we reach that point where the coaching staff feels they have to do that. Now, something else that was a talking point coming into this game was no scoring from the big 3, Matthews, Marner, and Nylander. That changed tonight. Nylander opened the scoring and then closed the scoring with the empty netter, and Marner had a pretty sweet goal of his own, unassisted, after he read Sidney Crosby's play. And yeah, that's pretty impressive.
That's what we finished Marner for. Just saying.
Yeah. More of that. But still nothing from the captain, the new captain. Although, God, he has a lot of chances. He has
boy, did he look frustrated on the bench, eh?
Yeah.
You can just tell he wants it so badly. And
I hope he's wearing the Amazon mics again, because I want to hear what he's saying this time.
Yeah, I mean, you can just, now everybody but him has scored. That's in the big 4, right? Tavares has scored, Marner scored, and Willie's now scored twice. I do think it's an inevitability. How many posts has he hit? Remember a couple seasons ago, he had a season where he was hitting a lot more posts than usual. And I hope it's not for the same reason, because that was the same reason where his wrist was a little bit sore. Yeah. But I do think a little bit of it is just, when you want it so badly, it's kind of the Nick Robertson thing. You want it so badly that you almost play yourself out of it. There were a couple of opportunities that he had tonight that were really good. He didn't hit any posts tonight, but he is getting the time and the space. It's just not going in for him. And I feel for the guy, like you come out of the 69 goal season last year, you almost get 70, you don't really do well in the playoffs. You get named the captain, and all of that is sort of piled on your back more and more. And so I'm sure, there's this little voice at the back of his head that's, like we all have, right? A little bit of self-doubt. And I think he just needs to relax, and he just needs to simplify. He had a couple of looks on the power play, but again, he seems like he's overthinking it and just he's trying too hard. He's not doing the things that he's good at. His desperation is visible. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, 1,000%. Like you said, it kind of is maybe a little bit of the Nick Robertson thing going on here, where he wants it so bad. He came 1 shy of 70 goals last year, and then everything fell apart in the playoffs for him, where he got 1 goal in game 2, and then he got sick and he couldn't even play for the back half, most of the back half of the series. Like he wants to prove that he has earned this captaincy. He wants to prove that he can do it again. And I think honestly, he gets 1 and then it's off to the races. As soon as that first one goes in and he remembers, oh, right, I can score. That is my thing. I am Austin Matthews. Then maybe then it's like, then all of a sudden we're talking about 70 again. Especially if it leads to a multi-goal game. But I think
that's what he does, right? I bet the first game that he scores, he gets at least 2.
Yeah.
Because he does score in bunches. He's kind of like Ovi that way, where he'll score a bunch in a game.
Yeah. How many hat tricks did he have last year? It felt like every 3 weeks we were talking about one. I went to a handful.
It became a non-talking point because it happened so frequently.
I went to a handful of games last year, and then I was at work after one of the games where he had a hat trick, and my colleague says to me, she says, how many Matthews hat tricks have you seen in person this year? And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even sure. It was 2 or 3. Like it should be a big deal for anybody to get a hat trick. He's, like you said, him, Ovechkin. There's a handful of guys where you're like, oh yeah, of course they did. So we'll have to see if he can. What will happen when he regains that? Hopefully it's soon. Hopefully. On Wednesday, we're talking about that first Matthews goal of the season. Now,
hopefully he's the Leafs leading goal scorer by Wednesday, by Thursday morning. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. As early enough in the season, why not? Hat trick, and all of a sudden he's past Willie.
Because it pains me so much that Cole Caulfield has like 3 goals and Matthews has none.
Yeah, gotta.
What fresh hell is this?
I push past it. Marner and Nylander, where are we feeling on these guys starting to break out finally this year?
Thank God.
Yeah, and they were nice goals too. I mean, you want them to score. You want them to score garbage goals. You need them to score garbage goals, but that the Domi fake out, then passing it to Nylander, which my eyes kind of tricked me on that play where I thought that was Robertson that scored that. The 88-89 on the jerseys, really, guys, you got to do that. You got to do that to me. But it was a beautiful goal, and then Marner just sneaking in behind, stealing Crosby's pass. And
I like that Marner and Nylander both made like the 2 best players on the Penguins look silly tonight.
Yes,
like that's all you can hope for, right?
Oh yeah. Brilliant stuff. Let's touch on the penalty kill a little bit. Again, lots of practice. Lots and lots of practice for these guys.
Practice.
But Marner and Matthews being the first 2 forwards out, something we never saw under Keefe. Sometimes you'd have Marner out there, but never Matthews. It would always be Marner and Kampf or something like that. And they seem to hold their own pretty well. I mean, the one power play goal came when Pontus Holmberg kind of tripped over his own 2 feet and went the wrong way. But the big guys showing that defensive responsibility that we know they have can be applied to the situation where they're a man down.
Well, and it's no mistake, right? Like Matthews has been in the Selke conversation for the last several years, even though he hasn't won. He is every single year he seems to take a step forward in terms of his defensive prowess. I wonder, there is a sneaky part of me that wonders that this extra time where he is on the PK, because they've taken so many, maybe that is affecting his energy levels, which is why he hasn't had maybe as much pop as he normally does.
Yeah.
Right? Like, think about it. The last 2 games, we've had at least 10 minutes of power play time. Not tonight. We only had 8 tonight. But every other game, he's playing at least 5 or 6 minutes more in a non-offensive position, in a defensive position. So, I mean, is that the reason? No, but there's a chance it's a contributing factor. Now, I do think that Marner is very capable and very able to work on the PK. Like you said, he's been on it before. He is one of the best defensive people in on the team in terms of his reads, in terms of his stick positioning. And so I do like that they're taking that upper role. Having said that, if it means that Matthews isn't going to have as much pop, I don't think it's necessary. Like, are there other captains in the league that play on the PK? Yes, absolutely. And I don't think that it's a bad idea, but is that where more of his effort should be spent? Is 1/4 of the time that he's playing on the ice, should that be in a strictly, or for the majority, defensively focused position? Again, is he able to? Yes, but is it the best way to distribute his time? Well, it kind of remains to be seen, right? I mean, the PK has been fine, but they've been scored on every game so far.
Yeah. And
not that that's been his fault or it's not one snowflake that leads to the Avalanche, but could it be a contributing factor? It could be. Could it be a contributing factor as to why he doesn't have as much pop, which he doesn't so far? It could be, right? And so I think that it's a good experiment. I think that it's good to know that he is an option, but he's also somebody that is our top paid player, and he has a history of injury. And so I don't love our main goal scorer, who is, as we've seen in the playoffs the last couple of years, irreplaceable. There is no one that even comes close to what he can do. And when he's out of the lineup, our entire lineup looks just, they look like they're missing a limb. Right. And so he's had an injury history. I don't love the idea of him trying to like take and block shots all the time because he's our best guy. He makes the most, and he's the guy that scores so many of our goals that I don't think that that's the best use of the time on the ice for him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in a pinch, is it would I be fine with it? Sure, but I don't love the idea of it full time moving forward, especially when you're paying David Kampf $2.4 million and he is so defensively minded.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where last season the Leafs had the best PK in the league, if not in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were unbelievable on the PK. And so to some degree, I'm like, it's not broken, so don't fix it. Like you're screwing with things a little bit too much. And I think it's been evident by the fact that they've been scored on in every game so far.
Yeah, it's true, and perhaps when Connor Dewar is back, maybe there's a move to rely on him a little bit more for some of those face-offs in on the PK, and Matthews. It's nice to have him as an option there. It's nice to have the ability to surprise other teams. Maybe you get a shorthanded goal here and there from him, but by and large, I think you're right. His energy is best used, even strength, and of course on the power play if and when that ever gets going.
Oh my God, can you imagine they go for 0 for 82? I thought there could be no worse hell.
that would truly be something only the Leafs could pull off. Like what would be worse? No power play goals in an entire season, or the whole Zamboni driver debacle from a few years ago. It would be a truly Leafy accomplishment.
Yeah, I don't want to wonder. I hate that we're having to wonder about how long it's going to be before the Leafs power play scores, because honestly, the more it goes on, the more I'm like, oh my God, it's becoming so hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like it's so bad, man. Yeah. On every single power play that the Leafs gotten so far, actually, they're spending like at least a minute per game on the power play in their own zone where the other team has the puck and is hemming them in. And it looks like they're even strength, and it's not, and it's not been good.
Yeah.
I do think that the power play is struggling, and I think other teams know it. I think that other teams don't even have to try and get in the Leafs' head because they're already in their own heads. I wonder, at this point, I'm like, okay, how many games does Mark Savard get before we call someone else? Because I don't understand how a team that has a completely different coaching, everybody behind the bench is different, with the exception of Curtis Sanford, who doesn't go behind the bench during a game. I don't understand how it can look as crippled as it was last year in the second half. Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It should not be. It should not be. There is so much talent here. It should not be. And like we said, let's hope Wednesday versus Los Angeles, we can end this conversation 3 for 3 on the power play. Let's hope for something like that. Like just really, let's hope we can put it to bed once and for all for this season.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into the third period here. I have a couple of things that are not really, they're sort of tangentially related to the game. They're more related almost to the broadcast and to things surrounding the team. And look, we talked about the opening ceremony a little bit, and Yanni Hakanpää just looming over everybody while still being like a foot lower than them or half a foot lower than them, like physically. Why does the Leafs opening game ceremony always suck? Why is it so boring? Why is it like, if I wasn't watching it for this, I would have just gone and done something else while it was happening. The Montreal one, I was watching it with a friend. We were commenting on like they had electric guitars and half an orchestra on the ice. They were doing so much. We saw a couple of seconds of the Edmonton one. They brought in some musicians again to really give it some extra pizzazz, some extra fun. The Leafs one is like, it's perfunctory. It's like, here are the people, please clap. They're like Jeb Bush, please clap. It's all like, we've
a teacher
got.
Calling attendance.
Yeah, it's like Austin, are you here? Mitch, are you here?
Yeah.
Like, present. Yeah.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah. And they don't mic the crowd, which I get for the first part of it when they're like going through people nobody's ever heard of, because we've all been at Scotiabank Arena or been somewhere like that when you don't quite know who these people are, and you're like, yeah, sure. The video coach. Yeah. All right. Which that guy does deserve a big round of applause. But not most people haven't heard of it. But like when you could hear it come through on the broadcast, that was when you're like, oh, these people actually do these. Here's people that people are actually excited about, because the rest of the time it was so cool. Yeah, exactly.
You got a big cheer tonight?
Yeah, but it still feels muted because they have the music cranked on the TV broadcast. Just lower it a little bit when people actually start cheering, and make this a little bit more fun. And the Leafs, they got to find a way to make it more fun. Get some pyrotechnics in there. We know it's possible. Like, do something interesting. It's not a really big thing. It's not an important thing, but it just feels like something that could be done to make things more fun for everybody.
Feels a bit like overcooked turkey.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
A bit dry.
Yeah.
A little chewy.
It's
not particularly tasty.
Yeah, a little.
And it needs a whole bunch of sauce to not feel like you're chewing on toothpaste. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that. I know that I've been to a handful of Leaf games myself in the last couple of years. I think that overall, the Leafs in-arena experience needs to be better. There are some good things, but the second that the play stops at Scotiabank Arena, there's so much music blasting so loud, you literally can't have a conversation.
Oh, yeah, you're shouting. Oh, yeah,
Right.
I went to the last preseason game, and it ends. I feel like, my voice is kind of hoarse. Why, we must have done a lot of cheering. And it's like, we did a fair bit, but mostly it was just from trying to shout over the music in the stoppages. Yeah. So,
I think they need to maybe, I don't know if it's just like the people that they've had the same people in charge of that for the last couple of years, or if they need to just make it like a little bit more interactive. I think they do such a good job for the most part with a lot of their alumni, but they don't, it's going to sound really awful. They don't have a lot of like younger alumni, right? Like the Boston Bruins. Ugh.
Yeah.
The Boston Bruins just had Patrice Bergeron retire, last year, the year before? And he's like there at everything.
Yeah.
And Matt Sundin, while he's there, he's not really there most of the time because he actually lives in Sweden.
Lives on the other side of the world. Yeah.
Right. And so they don't have like an abundance or even like, a small inventory of younger players that are alumni that are around the team and are involved with nights like this. Right. Yeah. They have Dougie Gilmour. They have, on occasion, Darcy Tucker. They occasionally have Cujo. They occasionally have these people, but it's not with any kind of consistency. And it's not in moments like this, like they don't have, they also don't do a lot of like crowd involvement. They don't have, like Montreal has like the torch being passed, right? Yeah. Like we don't have our own tradition. So maybe it's time we start one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the younger alumni point, that's so true. That is so true. Like Patrice Bergeron, like, he accomplished a lot in his career. Stanley Cup, gold medals, like all of these things.
Yep. Even Zdeno Chara is around the Bruins a lot.
Yeah. Last season at a game, my dad and I were talking about it as we were shouting over the music. Who's the next person to have their number raised to the rafters? And I'm like, it's probably one of the guys on the ice. Like it's Austin, or it's Morgan Riley, it's John Tavares. Yep. Hell, if they win the cup, you can just raise all of them. Just put the entire team up there. But like, ever since Matt's, like there hasn't been someone who's
a mainstayer.
Mainstayer. As much as we might have loved players like, Grabowski's having kind of a mini renaissance and that sort of thing, but we're not raising his number to the rafters.
We're not raising Phil Kessel's number. We're not raising JVR. We're not raising Reimer. We're not raising any of those guys because, they weren't known as, but when he was a Leaf.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like Phil Kessel, if anything, is kind of more known for his time in Vegas and Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Yeah. The Penguins have more of an argument to raise his number. Like he was there for some cups.
For that. Yeah, exactly. Right. There hasn't, and maybe part of that is because the Leafs haven't had a lot of playoff success, if any, in the last, 20 years. They, the closest they've gotten now is the second round, and they got trucked in that. Right. Yeah. So, I think that that's probably some of it. They don't have a lot of young people that are giving ideas. I do think that they have a lot of young people in the front office, but I don't think those people are in the position of, okay, let's change this about this, right? Like Brendan Shanahan has been in the driver's seat for the last decade.
Yeah.
And I think that is a microcosm of how everything's been the same.
Yeah.
Openings have been the same. The way that they've played have been the same. The trades they've made have been fairly predictable and been the same. There hasn't been a lot of change in terms of big things. And I think that's, it's funny that you bring that up, because I was thinking about it, and like, you can almost like set a watch to how the Leafs opening ceremony is going to go, because it's the same every year. And I do think that doesn't change until you get other people up top.
Yeah. I mean, the highlight and the most memorable moment of any of the opening ceremonies from the last few years was the time Rodion Amirov was there.
Yep. I was literally going to say the biggest thing was Amirov, and then it was followed by an awful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice thing because it was followed by an awful thing.
Yeah.
Like it's, it's because that was his moment. Before tragedy struck.
Yeah. It would be nice to have a nice moment to talk about instead of that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move into overtime. For anyone who's listening live, feel free to throw some questions out in the chat. We'll do our best to answer a couple before we go.
I do want to say hi to Luke Venables in the chat. Luke is always on watching streams with us. So welcome back, Luke. Happy to have you, buddy.
Yeah.
I hope that you had a great time watching the show, Luke.
Yes, thank you, Luke. Thank you, everybody. I'll throw in one sort of rapid fire question here.
Sure.
John Tavares misses the game because of illness. We spent a lot of time talking about the power play feeling like a continuation of the playoffs last year. Last year in the playoffs, Austin Matthews missed games due to illness. William Nylander missed games due to migraines. I guess that's not really illness. It is, but it wasn't like sick. It wasn't like the kind that we're he
wasn't injured.
Here. Yeah, and let me be clear. I'm not saying migraines aren't an illness by any stretch of the imagination.
No. I know what you mean.
And it felt like last year, every couple of games, somebody was missing because they were sick. Do the Leafs need to start wearing masks again? What's going on with this team? Why are they always sick? Why are they always sick?
I mean, even though you say that, I wouldn't say Joseph Wall.
Yeah, true.
It's not a bad idea, but also that only works for 50% of the people.
Yeah.
I think William Nylander before the game actually said that Johnny was actually fighting this back in New Jersey. So, I mean, illnesses happen, right? And when you go and work out and sweat with a bunch of other people, then it's likely that someone else it's going to go around the room, kind of like working in an office, right? If somebody gets sick, you work with those people every day, you see them every day, you exert yourself with them every day, and then all of a sudden, it goes through the whole team. Now, it sounds, he wasn't even at the ceremony tonight, so it sounds like they are trying to keep him away, hoping it does contain it to just him. That mask line caught me so off guard. I'm sorry. That was so funny. And you're right. There has been a consistent series of injuries, one after another, that are kind of rolling. And sometimes those are avoidable, and maybe wearing masks wouldn't be the worst thing, but that doesn't help tightness in ankles.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen to every team. People get hurt, people get sick. That's just life. But God, it's felt like the Leafs have just had a string of bad luck here.
Like a revolving door of injuries.
Exactly. Luke Venables, there we go, does throw in a question here in the chat. Who do you think is thriving the most under Berube's new style, and how would you describe that style?
Good question, Luke. It's not often that I'm stumped. I think Matthew Knies is going to capital L love playing under Craig Berube.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already got a number of points this year. He's off to a strong start. And I think it's going to be an equal love affair between him and Berube. I think Berube's going to love him, and I think he's going to love the coach back.
Yeah.
I think that Keefe not that he didn't properly use him, but I think that Berube's coaching style really lends to the kind of player and size and truculence of Matthew Knies. I think that he's going to do really well. I also think that if Nick Robertson can score a couple, there's a really good chance that he starts really leaning into that as well. The problem is that Nick Robertson is more likely to be knocked over than be knocked, or not be knocked over than knock someone else over. But you don't have to hit guys to be effective under this coach. You just have to play smart. You have to make good decisions, and you have to be quick with the puck. I think if he can stop taking penalties, I think that Simone Benoit will really like playing under him as well. But if you're asking me who I think is going to benefit the most, I think it's Nyes. And I think that's also combined with the fact that it's his second full season, right? Last year he had never played that many games, and this year his body's going to be more adapted to that kind of stress, that long of a season. And I think that a combination of that and the play style for Berube is going to go a long way. How about you?
Yeah, I was going to say Nyes as well. I think we saw it in
You
this game.
obviously have good taste.
Yeah, we saw it in this game. We saw it in the first two games. He was the most noticeable, most effective member of that top line. And as we were talking about, the power play started to look better when he showed up. So I feel like he fits in with what Berube wants. And
I also think Steven Lorentz, who has come in and already halved as many points as he had last year with the Panthers. I think Steven Lorentz is going to be a big player for us this year. I mean, he's come in hungrier than maybe anybody on the entire team. He's made a difference early. That fourth line is like night and day from what we've seen previously. And I think that a big, strong player like that forechecks so well and is almost always first on the puck is going to do really well. And I think he's going to be a massive difference maker, not only now, but going into April, hopefully.
Yeah, and I'll also throw in Pacioretty, I think, as the other PTO into bottom six forward from this preseason. The fact that Tavares goes out and Berube's first instinct is to try Pacioretty on the first power play unit, I think bodes well for Patch's future with this team and under Berube. Sure. And even though that little experiment didn't work, I mean, he scored the first goal of the season for this team, and he's looked good, and he looked really good in those first two games. He was a little bit more invisible tonight, but everyone's allowed an off night here and there. Sure.
Well, and that how much of that is also because he's taking more of a role with Tavares out of the line too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I think that if he can get some power play time, especially if you have Tavares on the opposite power play, because not that they're the same player, but they do weirdly have like a similar play type in terms of being close to the net, being fairly good like in and around the net. I do think Tavares is a little bit slower. Patches is pretty quick, which has been very nice to see. And I just think you're right. I think all the new guys, especially the guys on the PTOs, are really going to thrive.
Yeah. And I mean, those two, they were brought in. They were some of the few that were brought in while Berube was actually the coach, so you could actually have some say in who he wanted Brad Treliving to bring in the offseason.
Yeah.
But that, I think, is going to do it for this episode of Game Over Toronto. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening and chatting along with us. Lauren, thank you for being here. Where can people find you in between games and in between streams?
I'm glad you asked. You can find me over on Twitter at Lauren6. Unfortunately, I'm old and I'm not on social media, but you can follow me on Twitter. I am very active on there. If you don't already subscribe to the channel and like it, please do. Yes. And if you're watching this later on, if you're watching this down the line, maybe it's the off season next year and you're just that desperate for Leafs content. If you could share this with another Leafs fan in your life, it would really go a long way to growing it, because again, we are starting over from scratch. So every little bit of sharing helps. So where can everybody find you, Dom?
Absolutely. You can find me on social media at DominicJ25. Instagram is my social media drug of choice, but I'll pop in the other places as well. And if you happen to like Star Wars, you can check out my other podcast, The Star Wars Underworld. We've been going for a long time, and we talk about space wizards and laser swords and ships going boom in outer space. It's a lot of fun. So find that, search for Star Wars Underworld on wherever you look for podcasts and YouTube stuff. It's a lot of fun.
And congratulations on a great first show, Dom. Happy to have you, man. It's going to be a great season. I've had an opportunity now to stream with both you and Zach, and it's going to be a great year this year. I'm really stoked for you guys to be a part of it. And thanks for watching, everybody. And make sure you hit like and subscribe and follow us on socials. And we will see you next Wednesday against the Kings.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll just say real quick, Lauren, thank you for being back. And thank you for guiding Zach and I through these first couple of episodes.
Happy to help.
We'll only screw up a dozen more times, I promise. So yes.
That's okay.
Yes, subscribe to Game Over Toronto. Subscribe to all the Game Overs, and we will see everybody on Wednesday, hopefully discussing another Leafs win over the Los Angeles Kings. Have a good night, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.